Jourdon Anderson, or Jourdon Anderson, or Jourdon Anderson, was an African-American former slave noted for an 1865 letter he dictated, known as Letter from a Freedman to His Old Master. It was addressed to his former master, Colonel P.H. Anderson, in response to the colonel's request that Mr. Anderson return to the plantation to help restore the farm after the disarray of the Civil War. This letter is described as a rare example of documented slave humor, and its deadpan style has been compared to the satire of Mark Twain. Anderson was born around 1825, somewhere in Tennessee, and by the age of 7 or 8, he was sold as a slave to General Paulding Anderson of Big Springs, Wilson County, Tennessee. He subsequently passed to the general's son, Patrick Henry Anderson, probably as a personal servant, and a playmate, as the two were of similar age. In 1848, Jourdon married Amanda, Mandy McGregor, and the two eventually would have 11 children together. In 1864, Union Army soldiers camped on the Anderson plantation and freed Jourdon Anderson. He then began working at the Cumberland Military Hospital in Nashville before eventually settling in Dayton, Ohio. Moving with the help of the surgeon in charge of the hospital, Dr. Clark McDermott, there Anderson found work as a servant, janitor, and other random jobs until 1894, when he became a sexton. Not nearly as fun as it sounds, sexton is the title of someone who looks after and maintains the church and graveyard. It appears he was a sexton at the Westland Methodist Church, and that he held that position until his death in 1907, or 1905. We'll get into that later. Anderson's employer, Valentine Winters, was the father-in-law to McDermott, the surgeon that helped Jourdon move in 1864. Notes on some of these publications state that Jourdon dictated the letter verbatim to Valentine Winters, and that Winters is the one who submitted it for publication. Here's the letter. Dayton, Ohio, August 7th, 1865. To my old master, Colonel P.H. Anderson, Big Spring, Tennessee. Sir, I got your letter. I was glad to find that you had not forgotten Jourdon, and that you wanted me to come back and live with you again, promising to do better for me than anybody else can. I have often felt uneasy about you. I thought the Yankees would have hung you long before this for harboring rebels they found at your house. I suppose they never heard about you going to Colonel Martin's to kill the Union soldier that was left by his company in their stable. Although you shot at me twice before I left you, I did not want to hear of you being hurt, and I am glad you are still living. It would do me a good to go back to dear old home again and see Miss Mary and Miss Martha, and Allen, Esther, Green, and Lee. Give my love to them all, and tell them that I hope we meet again in a better world, if not this. I would have gone back to see you all when I was working in the Nashville hospital, but one of the neighbors told me that Henry intended to shoot me if he ever got a chance. I want to know particularly what the good chance is you propose to give me. I am doing tolerably well here. I get $25 a month. With residuals and clothing, I have a comfortable home for Mandy. The folks call her Mrs. Anderson. And the children, Millie, Jane, and Grundy, they go to school. They are learning well. The teacher says Grundy has a head for a preacher. They go to Sunday school, and Mandy and me attend church regularly. We are all kindly treated. Sometimes we overhear others saying them colored people were slaves down in Tennessee. The children feel hurt when they hear such remarks, but I tell them it was no disgrace in Tennessee to belong to Colonel Anderson. Many darkies would have been proud, as I used to be, to call you master. Now if you write and say what wages you will give me, I will be able to better decide whether it would be to my advantage to move back again. As to my freedom, which you say I can have, there is nothing to be gained on that score, as I got my free papers in 1864 from the Provost Marshal General of the Department of Nashville. Mandy says she would be afraid to go back without some proof that you were disposed to treat us kindly and justly, and that we have concluded to test your sincerity by asking you send us our wages for the time we served you. This will make us forget and forgive old scores, and rely on your justice and friendship in the future. I served you faithfully for 32 years, and Mandy 20 years. At $25 a month for me and $2 a week for Mandy, our earnings would amount to $11,680. Add this to the interest for the time our wages have been kept back, and deduct what you paid for our clothing and the doctor's visits for me, and pulling that tooth for Mandy, and the balance will show what we are in justice entitled to. Please send the money by Adams Express in the care of V. Winters, Esquire, Dayton, Ohio. If you fail to pay us for the faithful labors in the past, we can have little faith in your promises in the future. We trust the good Maker has opened your eyes to the wrongs which you and your fathers have done to me and my fathers, in making us toil for you for generations without recompense. Here I draw my wages every Saturday night, but in Tennessee there was never any payday for the Negroes any more than the horses and cows. Surely there will be a day of reckoning for those who have defrauded the laborer of his hire. In answering this letter, please state if there would be any safety for my Millie and Jane, who are now grown up and both good-looking girls. You know how it was with poor Matilda and Catherine. I would rather stay here and starve and die, if it come to that, than to have my girls brought to shame by the violence and wickedness of their young masters. You also please state if there has been any schools open for the colored children in your neighborhood. The great desire of my life now is to give my children an education and have them form virtuous habits. Say howdy to George Carter and thank him for taking the pistol from you when you were shooting at me. From your old servant, Jordon Anderson. See? Spells it like that. Jordon. Why don't we all just go with that, please? Jordon. Perfect. Then we can lay this one to rest. Bad choice of wording. Gravestone says Jordon with an A. Also says 1905 for the year of death instead of 1907, which is what the records say. Why didn't anybody know what year it was back then? Anyway, back to the letter. In a 2006 speech at the Conference on Slavery Reparations, historian Raymond Winbush retold the story of Anderson's letter. He also revealed that he had tracked down some of Patrick Henry Anderson's descendants, still living in Big Spring. Quote, "What's amazing is that the current living relatives of Colonel Anderson are still angry at Jordon for not coming back, knowing that the plantation was in serious despair after the war." If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. If we missed something you'd like to add, drop us a comment. And as always, thank you for listening.